Hi, welcome back. Today we're at Lighthouse Garden Center and we're going to go on a nursery tour. So, are you ready to dig in? Let's go.
Okay, so here we are starting off in the pottery section, in the planter section. One thing you need to consider if you're going to put plants in pots, if you live in a condo or in a home that gets a lot of strong winds from time to time, you want to get a pot that has a wide base. Many of the things that you're seeing, some of these here are pretty good, but you want to avoid ones that are tapered and tall. The wind will knock them over. It's happened to us in the past. We learned our lessons painfully many years ago. So they still sell them at these nurseries. So those may be good for an enclosed screen patio or something. But you need more squatty pots that are just as wide as they are tall. Here's a great example. See the gray ringed pots, how squat they are? Those are really good. But these oval and square tall planters are not. They're going to tip over in a big windstorm. Here you can see me looking at some euphorbias, also known as crown of thorns, and they have a lot of new varieties which are really cool. Some of them are very broadleaf, but the original has these really tiny leaves with these prickly thorns up and down the trunk. These are really good for using in a drought-tolerant area, full sun. And while we're on this topic of picking plants for your garden, this channel's focus is on sustainability. You want your garden to be as hardy and as healthy as possible. So you want to pick the right plants. You want them to have a good root base, and you want to check these when you go to the nursery and pull them out of the pot. You also want to look at the leaf structure and make sure that there's no dings or broken branches on the trunk that could lead to some decay. And you also want to just look around the nursery itself to see how well they're maintaining it. The base of the plants, you want to make sure that there's no weeds growing in the container. Those things can transition into your yard, and then they can take off and grow in between your plants and create this maintenance nightmare. Another thing you want to look at for selecting a plant for your sustainable garden is to make sure the plant has no visible pests on its leaves or around the trunk. This plant here is a king sago. Years ago, it got this horrible lobate lac scale, and it would reproduce like crazy, and it nearly killed off. It decimated so many king and queen sagos in the South Florida region. But eventually, I think they brought in some beneficials, and they were able to control that scale. But it's very important when you go to a nursery to check and look at the underside of the leaves, because that's where the scale will be, or also on the trunk. Or you may see thrips. Gardenia tent, that's a perfect example. Gardenias will have thrips in the flowers, and it's very hard to control them sometimes if they get too large of a population. So you want to make sure the nursery is on their game and that they're taking care of this, and they're not going to transport over to your yard and infect your healthy plants that you may already have growing in another part of your yard. This plant I'm inspecting is a classic favorite of ours. It's the powder puff shrub. It has these beautiful red puffball flowers, very fuzzy. And the flower starts off like a raspberry cluster. You can see those little berry things. Those things will burst open into these big red fuzzy flowers, and it is a pretty low maintenance plant. It grows larger than most shrubs. It'll get probably about 5 feet wide by 5 feet tall. But they're relatively low maintenance, which is good for having, again, a sustainable garden. But you do want to make sure that you fertilize them, once a year to keep those blooms going. Another cool aspect of the powder puff shrub is that it attracts wildlife and pollinators. So if you plant it in your yard, you can expect to see hummingbirds come by, as well as butterflies and bees. And we know with the colony collapse disorder, bees need our help. So anything we can do to provide them some source of nectar and pollen is all the better. Worldwide, we're deforesting at an alarming rate, and bees need our help. So planting pollinators in your garden not only is a sustainable thing, but it's also a humane thing. What I'm pointing to over here is called the Mast Tree. It's a tall, slender palm. You can see me comparing myself nice and slender as well. Anyways, this is a good plant to use if you want to screen against a neighbor's property that has like a 2 or 3 story home and you want some privacy. These can grow very, very tall, but they don't grow very, very wide. And that's really good to use almost like as a fast growing hedge that you don't have to trim, which definitely rolls back into doing a strong, sustainable garden. You don't want to do a lot of maintenance, and this could suit that need pretty well. This guy over here is called Natal Plum or Kalusia. We used it for years and years as a ground cover, very drought tolerant, low maintenance, salt tolerant, but it got supplanted by Green Island ficus since it was more easily cultivated, and that plant just took off, and it has the same kind of dark green leaf without the thorns. This Kalusia does have thorns, but it has this beautiful white flower. Really nice plant. I think people need to bring it back. The plant to the right of that is called Jettropha. Super drought tolerant, super low maintenance, really no pests. It's not a native, but it's definitely xerophytic, and it's good to plant for a sustainable garden. But in limited uses. It's been kind of much overused in many areas. Here I'm pointing to Kalusia Gutifera. It's a bushy screening shrub. So contrasted to the Mast Tree, which is tall and slender, this gets big and wide, but it's a great screen, great wide screen if you need for screening some utilities or some part of your yard that you want to block a view. It does have this really cool, thick, waxy leaf, and it's pretty drought tolerant. Here's a classic favorite, the Podocarpus. It's used as a thin shrub, similar to what you can do with the mast, but it can be trimmed very, very thin and very, very tall. Forms a nice, elegant shrub, a nice, elegant hedge. You'll see this in very wealthy homes, well manicured, but it actually will grow to a tree. It's very slow growing. It's not a native. It is drought tolerant, but if you're going to use it for a shrub and you do need to have it, it's pretty low maintenance in the sense you don't need to trim it a lot. So that helps move something into the sustainable garden category, in that you don't always have to be out there touching it, maintaining it, trimming it. And over here, you see me scoring an adorable Jettropha. There was several little pink Jettrophas in the back that I didn't see initially, and those are more rare, and we were so lucky to score that. We're so happy we have that on our balcony, and we're just thrilled. The Jettropha will attract both hummingbirds and butterflies. Such a cool little plant. Super drought tolerant, highly recommend it. For those who live in South Florida, to plant it for your garden. It's definitely a sustainable plant because it doesn't really have many pests, and you don't have to water it that much, and it flowers year round. Great. And it doesn't get very tall, so it's more of an ornamental small tree, or it can even be kept as a shrub. What I'm inspecting here is a variegated version of Pandanus utilis, the screw pine. It has these serrated little edges in the center of the underside of the leaf. And the parent plant, the utilis, is a very messy plant. So I'm not sold on these medium shrubs or accents. They're very striking, but the parent plant, the larger tree type, is very messy. It drops tons of leaves all the time, which is a headache. And so I don't always recommend these, but maybe in limited select locations it may be adequate. And now we're going into the shade house. Here's some beautiful croton, shade tolerant, also can handle full sun. They do get spider mites, which can be a problem. They have been used in as interior plants, but they do get spider mites, so I'm not a huge fan of them inside the home. This plant over here is Ficus ali, which is a great interior plant. You can use those inside your home. And of course, Ficus decora, love it. It's related to the Ficus tineke, which is a variegated version, which is right here. We snagged one of these. And you can see by the leaves on all of these that they're taking really good care of them. The new buds are coming out healthy. And I'm not sure if this is the one we actually took home, but they seem to be pest free for the most part. There were some brown spots on a few of them. That could have been some fertilizer burn from past applications. But this is a very popular plant, and this is the stuff that is pretty much sold up north where a lot of people are asking it. There you can see a little bit of probably a fertilizer burn on one of those leaves. But overall, the quality of the plants at the nursery here were very, very good. Here's the tineke we selected, and behind it are some calatheas. They're not my favorite. They're a little more temperamental when you use them as an interior plant. I do not plant them outside. In the background here, we have some cane plants. Those are mass canes. Those are really tough interior plants. Were overused in the past, but I think they're having a little renaissance period. And here's a look back at some of the ali and some of the crotons in the background there. Here we are walking past the Chinese fan palm. It's a slow growing, low maintenance plant. And guilty pleasure, I love the Australian tree fern. It is not low maintenance in the sense, loves the shade, but it is just beautiful. Look at those fern-like leaves. Gets this beautiful curly Q new growth that is just, looks like it's coming out of the Jurassic Park. I think there's one in the background there if you look carefully. Just a beautiful, beautiful fern-like tree, but it is not low maintenance, therefore it's really not something for your sustainable garden. But in life, what are we if we're not to tend to our garden? So maybe once in a while we can have an exception to the rule here. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant. What the nursery has on display over here is more for interior use. In the background, there's a red Siam aglaonema. There's also an anthurium in the foreground and some more aglaonema. And to the right is the Swiss cheese, the monstera, which is all the rage to have the variegated version, very hard to come by right now. And for you millennials, I think you don't use all the rage. You probably use something like sick or dope to have that variegated version of the monstera. Very, very hard to come by. We haven't been able to get it. We've had some people growing it for seed for us for about 6 months, and still no plant ready for sale. The plant I'm coming up to now is a red-shelled ginger. It's not typically a plant for a sustainable garden. It's not typically low maintenance. It doesn't tend to have a lot of pests, but it does have a higher watering need. So for it to be used in a South Florida garden, since this is where this plant region where it grows, it would need to be a naturally depressed area that tends to hold moisture more often, and it needs to be shaded. But the leaves are beautiful, and the flower is just very, very striking.
Oh, this was a great nursery tour. We scored 2 plants. Can't believe we got a pink Jettropha. It's not easy to come by, very like that, and a tineke, nice size. We actually had to get a mail order tineke at home, but here we found that they're growing quite a few, so Don't be jealous because we got a really big one. It was really, really healthy too. So, very successful. Lighthouse Garden Center, highly recommend it. Okay, so we got our plants home safe and sound. And what you want to do is acclimate them before you bring them inside to your air-conditioned home. You want to keep them out on your balcony in the shade. Even if they're grown in the sun, you want to start keeping them in the shade for about a week or so. And you also want to spray it down with some neem oil to make sure you get any pests, so you don't transfer those pests to the ones you have inside. Things you'll catch from a nursery, the most common would be like spider mites or mealybugs. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray the taniki with some neem oil, simple neem oil. We mix ours with a little bit of water and just a dash of soap so it sticks to the plant leaves really well. And you just spray it up. You could do this, let it sit here for a few days, and then you just hit it with a second round. And now moving on to the next one, this guy, the pink Jettropha. Isn't that awesome? Right over here we have the red that we've been moving around, getting ready to bring and redo the balcony. As you can see, there's very strong red, but look at this beauty. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? A big pink, like almost like, you know, this looks like buds that you have on cherry blossoms up in Washington, D.C. Super cool. We're so excited about this find. One thing you gotta do and be very cognizant of is pull all these weeds out so you don't have this issue. Most of them won't do so well inside, but you want to pull these out by the roots. And again, like I said, wait a week out here, spray it down with neem oil, and then wait for any of these little roots, these little buggers to come back up, and then pull them out so you don't have them inside your home. So right now I'm just gonna spray it down with neem oil. And that should do it. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, see you later.
We want to thank you again for joining us. And if you like what you see, please consider subscribing to our channel and let your friends and family know too. Thanks again.